I stood frozen in my son's driveway, staring at the crumpled photograph in my hands. It was the one I'd given him on his wedding day, me holding him as a baby, both of us laughing. The glass was shattered, the frame bent, and it was sitting on top of yesterday's garbage like it meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. That's when I understood that the son I raised, the boy I sacrificed everything for, had erased me from his life completely. But what I didn't know then, what I couldn't have possibly imagined, was that throwing away that photo was just the beginning of a truth so devastating it would destroy everything I thought I knew about my family. Because 3 weeks later, I would discover why he really threw it away, and the reason would make me wish I'd never picked it up in the first place. My name is Margaret, and for 38 years, I believed I was a good mother. I raised my son Daniel alone after his father walked out when he was 2. I worked double shifts at the hospital, skipped meals so he could have new shoes, postponed my own dreams so he could chase his. Every decision I made was for him. And for most of his life, I thought he understood that. I thought we had something unbreakable. The first crack appeared 6 months before I found that photo. Daniel had just gotten married to a woman named Vanessa. Beautiful, polished, the kind of woman who looked like she'd never struggled a day in her life. But from the moment they started dating, I felt her pulling him away from me. Sunday dinners became inconvenient. My phone calls went unanswered for days. When I finally saw him, he seemed distant, like he was counting the minutes until he could leave. I told myself it was natural. Newlyweds needed space. I was being overbearing. Then came the wedding. I'd saved for 2 years to help pay for it. $15,000 from my retirement fund, money I'd need in just a few years when I turned 70. I handed him the check 3 months before the ceremony, and he hugged me tight and whispered, "I don't know what I'd do without you, Mom." Those were the last kind words he ever said to me. The wedding itself was beautiful, but strange. The seating chart had been rearranged, pushing me to a table in the back corner with distant relatives I'd never met. During the reception, Daniel barely spoke to me. When it was time for the mother-son dance, Vanessa's mother convinced him to do a parents' dance instead, pairing me with her father, a man who clearly didn't want to be there. I smiled through it all, told myself I was being sensitive. But as I left that night, I overheard something that made my blood run cold. I'd gone back inside to grab my purse when I heard Vanessa's voice coming from the bride's room. The door was slightly open, and she was on the phone with someone, laughing. "It's finally over," she said. "God, I thought she'd never leave. Did you see how she tried to monopolize him during pictures?" There was a pause. Then, "Don't worry. Phase 1 is complete. Now we just need to make sure she gets the message and stays away." Daniel's already on board. He understands what needs to happen. She served her purpose, paid for the wedding, and now it's time for him to focus on his real family. I left without making a sound. For weeks, I tried to convince myself I'd misunderstood. But then the distance grew worse. Daniel stopped returning my calls entirely. When I drove to their house, he opened the door only halfway, his body blocking the entrance. "Mom, this isn't a good time," he said, not meeting my eyes. "I just wanted to see how you're settling in. I brought some of Grandma's recipes." "We don't need them. We're trying to establish our own traditions." "Daniel, what's going on? Did I do something wrong?" He hesitated, and for just a second I saw my little boy again. But then his expression hardened. "You need to give us space, Mom. Vanessa thinks. We both think you're too involved in our lives. It's not healthy." "Too involved? Daniel, I'm your mother." "That's the problem. You want to be part of everything. You need to find your own life. Stop making me your entire world." The door shut. I stood there for 5 minutes, waiting for him to open it again. He never did. That was 3 months ago. Since then, I tried everything. Texts that went unanswered. Voicemails never returned. Even a birthday card with money inside, he never acknowledged it. I drove past his house sometimes, late at night, just to imagine what his life looked like without me in it. I knew it was pathetic, but he was all I had. And then I found the photo in the trash, and everything I thought I knew shattered into pieces I could never put back together. It was a Tuesday morning, trash day in his neighborhood. I'd driven past his house on my way to the grocery store. Not intentionally, though the route was 15 minutes out of my way. The garbage bins were at the curb, lids slightly open. That's when I saw it. The silver frame catching the morning sunlight, sitting on top of a black garbage bag like discarded junk. I pulled over, my heart hammering, and lifted the frame. It was the photo I'd given Daniel on his wedding day. I'd written on the back, "Daniel, you'll always be my greatest adventure. Love, Mom." Someone had crossed out my message with thick black marker. Written underneath in handwriting I didn't recognize were two words: "Move on." I stood there clutching that photo, and something inside me broke. But it also ignited. I wasn't going to be erased. I wasn't going to disappear quietly. I deserved answers. I deserved to understand what had turned my loving son into a stranger who threw his mother away like garbage. So I started digging. I created a fake Facebook profile to see their posts since Daniel had blocked me. What I found seemed normal at first: pictures at restaurants, vacation photos. But then I noticed something odd. In every photo, I'd been cropped out or edited out. Wedding pictures that had included me now showed empty spaces where I'd stood. They were rewriting history, creating a version of Daniel's life where I'd never existed. Then I found Vanessa's private Instagram account. I spent 2 days creating a convincing fake profile. She accepted my follow request within an hour. What I saw there changed everything. The account was filled with posts about her wealthy parents, lavish gifts, exotic trips. But it was the captions that made my stomach turn. Under a photo of her parents, finally free from the toxic influence. New family, new boundaries, new life. Under a picture of their honeymoon, step 1 complete. Amazing what the right motivation can accomplish. Under a recent selfie, he's finally seeing things clearly. No more dead weight holding us back. Dead weight. She meant me. I scrolled back through months of posts and found a series from before they'd gotten engaged. Photos with her parents at business meetings. Captions about family investments and strategic planning. Then I found it. A post from 8 months before the wedding. It was a photo of a document, mostly blurred but with a few visible words: trust fund disbursement, conditional upon family restructuring, maternal separation. And the caption: sometimes love requires sacrifice, but the payoff is worth it. Money bag. My hands went numb. I screenshot everything. And then I hired a private investigator. Because I was about to discover that Daniel hadn't just married a woman who disliked me. He'd married into a family that had turned erasing me into a business transaction. The investigator's name was Linda, and within 3 days, she'd uncovered the truth. Vanessa's family was seriously wealthy. Old money from real estate development. They had a trust fund set up for her, $12 million. But there was a catch. Vanessa could only access the full amount if she met certain criteria by age 30. She had to be married. The marriage had to last at least 5 years. And she had to demonstrate family independence, which the trust defined as establishing a nuclear family unit separate from maternal influence. The trust had been designed by a bitter old woman who'd hated her own mother-in-law. Vanessa was 28 when she met Daniel. She had 2 years to meet the requirements or lose everything. So she found a man who would cooperate. A man who was close to his mother, too close, in her family's opinion. A man she could manipulate into cutting me out. My son wasn't just distant because his wife didn't like me. He'd been convinced that abandoning me was necessary for their future, their wealth, their real family. And I'd paid for their wedding. I'd funded my own erasure. Linda showed me bank statements. 3 weeks after the wedding, $50,000 had been deposited into their joint account, a gift from Vanessa's parents for meeting family expectations. There were text messages, too, between Vanessa and her mother. He's still calling her. We need to push harder. The trust lawyer confirmed complete separation is required. No contact for at least 6 months. Remind him about the timeline. $2 million upfront once we prove separation, then the rest over 5 years. They turned my relationship with my son into a checklist item. But here's what destroyed me most. There were messages from Daniel too. I know this is hard, but it's for our future. She'll understand eventually. She wants me to be happy. I feel terrible, but you're right. We need to think long term. My son knew. He wasn't some innocent victim. He was a willing participant in erasing me from his life in exchange for money. I sat in Linda's office, staring at the evidence, and felt something inside me die. But I wasn't going to let them win. Not like this. If they wanted me gone, they were going to pay for it in ways they couldn't imagine. I created a blog, not under my real name. I called it The Mother They Erased, and I told everything. The wedding, the growing distance, the photo in the trash, the trust fund, the manipulation. I posted screenshots of bank transfers, redacted just enough to protect me legally, but clear enough to tell the story. I detailed every sacrifice I'd made raising Daniel alone, every penny I'd given him. And then I explained exactly what his wife's family had paid him to do. To abandon me, to erase me for money. I posted it on a Wednesday night. By Friday morning, it had 40,000 views. By Saturday, it was everywhere.
Parenting forum. Hedge.
Facebook groups. Twitter was on fire. People were tagging Vanessa's family business, her parents' social media accounts, her father's real estate company. The comments were brutal. This is absolutely disgusting. What kind of man sells his own mother? I hope his marriage was worth it because he's lost something he can never get back. Someone found Vanessa's private Instagram. Within hours, her posts were screenshot and spread everywhere, her words about dead weight and strategic planning, now public knowledge. By Monday, the local news had picked it up. Vanessa's father's company started losing clients. The charity boards they sat on requested their resignations. Vanessa's lifestyle brand sponsorships disappeared overnight. And Daniel was fired from his job when his employer decided his association with the story was bad for their family-friendly image. It took 6 days for him to call me. Mom. His voice was hollow. What did you do? I told the truth. I said calmly. You've destroyed our lives. Vanessa's family is threatening to sue. I lost my job. We can't leave the house without people screaming at us. Good. There was a long silence. How could you? I'm your son.
No.
My son wouldn't have thrown me away for money. My son wouldn't have let his wife turn me into an obstacle. My son wouldn't have crossed out my message and thrown it in the trash like I was nothing. Mom, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You chose money over me. You chose a trust fund over the woman who raised you alone, who gave you everything. We were going to make it up to you, he said desperately. Once the trust fund came through, we were going to take care of you. I don't want your money, Daniel. I never did. I wanted my son, and you sold him to the highest bidder. He was crying. Please, Mom. We need help. The trust fund is frozen because of the publicity. Vanessa's parents are furious. We can't pay our mortgage. We're going to lose everything. And there it was, the final truth. You're not calling because you miss me, I said, my voice breaking. You're calling because you need money. Even now, I'm still just a resource to you. That's not, Mom, no. Goodbye, Daniel. I hung up, blocked his number, and then I sat on my kitchen floor and cried for the son I'd lost. Vanessa's family froze the trust fund pending an investigation. Daniel and Vanessa separated 3 months later. He moved to a one-bedroom apartment, working at a warehouse. She moved back with her parents. He tried to contact me again. Letters with long apologies about how he'd gotten lost, made terrible choices, wanted to make things right. I read every letter once. Then I burned them. 6 months later, I got a call from Vanessa. I need you to know something, she said. I loved him. It wasn't just about the money. Then why? Because my parents made it clear that if I didn't follow the trust requirements, they'd cut me off completely. I convinced myself it was temporary, that once we had the money, we could let you back in. I didn't realize that asking someone to abandon their mother changes them. It poisoned everything. Why are you telling me this? Because you won. You wanted us to suffer, and we are. I hope it brings you peace. She hung up. It didn't bring me peace. Not even close. The truth is, when you lose your child, there are no winners. There's only grief wearing different masks. It's been a year now since I found that photo in the trash. Daniel stopped writing. I heard he'd moved to another state, trying to rebuild where no one knew his story. As for me, I've started living again. Not the life I imagined. That died with my son's betrayal. But a new life. I volunteer at a community center with single mothers. I've made real friends who know my story and support me anyway. I took down the blog 6 months ago. I said what I needed to say. The world heard me. Sometimes late at night, I take out that photo. I had it reframed. I keep it on my nightstand as proof that it existed at all. That once, I had a son who laughed in my arms. That once, I was someone's whole world. I don't know if Daniel ever thinks about that photo, if he remembers giving it away, if he regrets learning that some things, once thrown away, can never truly be reclaimed. But I know this. The next time someone tries to erase me, I won't wait to be found in the trash. Because mothers don't disappear quietly. Not anymore. And if my story helps even one person stand up to being erased, to being treated as disposable, then maybe something good came from all this pain.
I'm Margaret.
I raised a son alone. I gave everything for him. He threw me away for $12 million that he never even got. And I made sure the world knew exactly what that meant. That's my story. That's what happens when you forget that love isn't something you can put a price on, and that mothers, when pushed far enough, will burn down the world just to prove they existed at all. Some voices stay silent for years. But here, every story finds its sound. Like, subscribe, and stay with the silent parents.